Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Gruver. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Kathy Gruver.
And I'm Jason Mefford. And we're just going to leave it there for today's episode.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. No, of course, we're not going to do that. No, we, before we start recording, we always start talking about stuff. And the whole idea of relationships has kind of come up and around, self-care, self-love as well. And so we'll see kind of where this goes. But, as I've kind of been looking and we were talking, a lot of relationship problems come from self-love issues as well, right? That a lot of times, and again, you probably heard, the world mirrors you. And so if you're dealing with relationship issues, it's probably you're even having a relationship issue with yourself that is mirroring itself into your relationships with other people. So, so much of our heartache and woes come back to us not really loving ourselves as much as we should. And I know even for me, that's smacked me good the last few weeks. So we thought we'd talk a little bit more about some of this and where it kind of goes. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was, again, before we got on the air, I was talking to Jason about my coaching and how I didn't set out to be a relationship coach, but suddenly 3 of the clients that have just come to me are dealing with relationship issues. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because when I've talked with clients about relationships, there's like a third that totally blames the partner. There's a third that totally blames themselves. I'm a horrible person. I don't deserve love. And then there's a third that kind of puts their sleeves over their hands and goes, I don't know. So it's this, it can't be all the other person's fault. Nope. You have to take responsibility for how you're contributing to that, whether it's how you're responding/reacting, whether it's how you're communicating. I'm a huge fan of Harville Hendrix. His book, Getting the Love You Want, it should be on every shelf. I hate the word should, but should be on every shelf of anybody that has been, will be, or is in a relationship. Some amazing exercises, some amazing insight. And one of the things he says, which I sort of went, is every criticism your partner has of you probably has a nugget of truth into it. And I went, crap. So if you can take away whether it's the sarcasm or the verbal abuse aspect of it, or, take that delivery away and distill it down to that nugget, there's probably a nugget of truth there. So we can actually learn from what our partner is telling us or yelling at us. So taking a look at ourselves, telling or yelling.
Telling or yelling.
Telling you, I think I just coined that phrase. So taking a look at, sort of jumping into the middle of this, but taking a look at what they're saying to and about you and asking, what is true in that? What is true in that I can improve myself and make better?
Well, and even, again, because like we said, a lot of those probably criticisms that your partner or the other person in the relationship may be seeing, are going on within you. They are going on within you, and they're getting reflected out. And, again, kind of the smack in the face to me was, stopping and actually listening to the words that we're saying about ourselves. Okay. Now I've always been one to use some self-deprecating humor, right? Because I figure it's nicer, because you're not targeting someone. Sometimes the comedians that just really roast somebody and just get in on them, it's like, to me, that's almost like mean, man. You're being an asshole. Quit that, kind of thing. Some people really get on that. I don't as much. So I tend to sometimes do some self-deprecating humor. But the problem is, even that self-deprecating humor, there's truth to every joke, right? And so again, if I'm saying some of those things, even if it's meant to be funny, how many of those things do I actually believe, right? Or when someone gives you a compliment, do you discount the compliment?
Yep.
Do you denigrate yourself slightly in the way that you respond? as well, that as we start kind of looking and thinking about this, again, a lot of our relationship issues are probably caused by relationship issues with ourself first.
Yeah. Well, and also so much really does come from how things are modeled and our relationships from our parents.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we're a little kid and we start to see that independence, so we jump off our mom's lap and we head into the other room and we kind of look back to see what they're going to do. The smartest thing a parent could do is to say, yeah, go check that out. Have fun. I'm going to be right here when you get back. That develops a really strong sense of security. That develops a strong sense of independence. That's great. Typically, that doesn't happen. It's either one of two things. Either your parent's totally gone and you can do whatever you want, and then you don't get that attachment, or your parents like, oh, be careful. Oh, don't go in there. Oh, don't. I watched a friend of ours with their kid at the beach, and anytime the wave, it's Santa Barbara, we don't get big waves. You're not going to be swept away. Little bloop, up on the beach, and they would be, oh, careful, you're going to get wet. Oh, be careful. Oh, are you okay? And they were so overprotective. And now I've seen these kids grow up, and I go, oh, I watched that form. I mean, there's so much dysfunction in relationship because of that overbearing paranoidness. So you develop these attachment things. So are you needy for attention, or are you like, leave me alone, I'm going to be reading my book? You can watch this kind of happen in how your parents treated you growing up. The other thing that I found fascinating that Harville Hendricks just said was, when we're babies, every need is filled from the outside. We cry, somebody figures it out. They make a face at us, we laugh. We scream, they have to get that need met. And so as an adult, we still have that part of our brain that goes, ah! And we expect somebody outside of ourselves to fill every need we have, because that's that baby part of our brain that's like, I scream, you better figure it out. And you can see that, I see that in my own behavior. It's like, I'm feeling poopy. Who can make me laugh today? Rather than finding a way to self-soothe and fill those needs in ourselves, we tend to look outside for it.
Well, and that's why the relationship issues are so hard for us to deal with, right? Because again, if we're always looking outside for that validation, right? So mommy needs to tell me that I'm a good boy, so that I feel proud of that, or the job that I have, the title that I have, the whatever that I did provides me with that external validation that I am important, I am loved. If we're always relying on that external validation, the minute it goes away, we're fucked.
Yep.
Right. And so again, that's why your relationship with yourself, this self-love, the self-care that we've talked a lot about, is so important, because what it should be is, regardless of what's going on in our external world, we're still taking care of ourselves internally. Yep. And if we're not doing that, if we're not, being kind to ourselves, one of the questions in coaching, that comes up a lot of times when you're coaching somebody is, people will talk and they'll say something about themselves, right? And so you kind of turn it around and you go, okay, what I just heard you say was this, right? Now I want you to think of a child, maybe your child, maybe a niece, a nephew, somebody that you love. Would you say that same thing to that child that you just said? And of course, people are like, oh no, I would never say that to another human being, right? And then it's like, why are you saying that to yourself?
Yep.
Why are you saying that to the most important person in your life, right? And we're not talking about being egomaniacal, psychotic kind of personality.
Right.
But if we don't know how to soothe ourselves and derive our self-worth from internal, and being who we are authentically, then we're never going to find it outside.
Right. Oh, absolutely. We have to, and you and I talked about this, it's not about finding the right partner, it's being the right partner. Mm-hmm. And, the whole, what was the Jerry Maguire thing of you complete me. I'm so torn about that, because no one can complete you. However, with what I know about child development and how we look to partners to fill what our parents didn't give us, in a way, we feel like they are completing us. They're giving us that piece that our parents didn't give us, or they're exactly mirroring what our parents gave us because we still are working out that bullshit drama. You know, my mother was never around, so now I have a boyfriend who's distant, you know, that kind of stuff. My dad was an abusive alcoholic. I don't know why I keep finding abusive alcoholic men. I do, you know, like, you know, and it's so much easier to, you know, to look at other people's relationships and go, oh, that's messed up. But we have so much trouble looking at our own stuff because, you know, you can't see the, what is it? You can't see the smudge on your own face or something like that. I don't know what it was. But yeah, it's about figuring out who you are and going back to pretty much everything we've said in every episode. What do you want from yourself? What do you want from yourself, and how do you get that? Do you meditate? Do you do affirmations? Do you ask other people the good qualities of you so that you can magnify that out? There's so many different exercises you can do to help fill those voids inside yourself. Because if we're looking to the outside to fill it, it's not going to work that way.
Well, and because you brought up the point about, you know, people in their relationships, because I've seen this, you know, relationship breakup, right? And so people go back to being single, right? Whether it's divorce or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it happens to be, right? You get out of a relationship, a close personal relationship with someone, and we no longer feel complete. We feel like, you know, and you see this so much of the time. I see it in other people. I saw it in myself, actually, after I got divorced, you know, as well, is that, you know, a lot of times we sit there and go, oh, woe is me. Will anyone else ever love me? Will I be able to find someone that loves me? I want a kind, loving partner, right? And you hear people saying these things, you know, and I'm so sad because I'm alone and I just want a kind, loving partner. It's like, listen to yourself. If you want a kind, loving partner, then you need to be a kind, loving person who a kind, loving partner would be drawn to, right? Because so much of the time it's this self-loathing, woe is me, that makes you miserable and sad to be around. You suck the energy away from everybody else. So guess what? If you're in that state, you're not going to attract a kind, loving partner because they're going to want to get the hell away from you. They're like, leave me alone. You're no, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so funny. When I was growing up in Pittsburgh, we used to go to the mall and walk around the mall because there was nothing else to do. So we would, you know, troll around. We'd stop in the food court and we'd like look at clothes and never really buy anything, but we'd look for boys, basically is what we were doing. So I was always boy crazy when I was a kid. So my girlfriend and I would go and we're walking around the mall, and I, you know, beautiful girl, big smile, gorgeous long hair. She was gorgeous. But anytime guys would stop and talk to us, they totally ignored her and they all put their attention on me. Now, of course, her view of that was, you're prettier than me, and you, which I don't think I was. But the reason was is I was confident and I was smiling and I was friendly and I was open, and she'd stand there like this, assuming no one wanted to talk to her. Well, if you present yourself like that, of course no one wants to talk to you. She didn't look approachable. She didn't look friendly. She didn't look like they were going to have a good time talking to her. And she never got that. But as in the outsider, I could step back and go, well, dude, you look miserable. Like, you know, so it is projecting that. And again, you don't have to be this egomaniac, like, I'm the best thing ever. But you want to present yourself like you're friendly and that you love yourself, because people are attracted to that. People are attracted to that feeling of wholeness that you present. Yeah. And if you look like you're looking for someone to fill every need, that's only going to attract someone who probably has the same wounds and is also just as needy, and I don't want to say dysfunctional, because we're not all dysfunctional. Well, maybe we are all dysfunctional. Actually, let me rethink that. But you're not going to attract the partner you want if you go into it looking for someone to fill all these needs. It just doesn't work that way.
Well, and I saw it for myself, and I've seen it in other people as well, is that, you know, when you finally get over your pity party bullshit, and you actually say, okay, you know, if I want a kind, loving partner, I'm just using this as an example, right? If you want a kind and loving partner, then start becoming a kind and loving person. And the minute that you start doing that and you start changing yourself on the inside, then that confidence comes. Your vibration and frequency goes up, right? People are attracted to you because, like you said, there's a great line in a movie or in a song. It was something about, I'm going to get it a little bit wrong, but you'd be so much prettier if you smiled. Okay. And, again, you could be the most gorgeous person in the world, but if you're kind of miserable to be around, you're not smiling, you're whatever, no matter what is going on physically, people are not going to be attracted to you as much as if you're confident, if you're loving, if you're outgoing, if you're interesting, right? It's those kind of things that actually attract or draw people to you. And so the more you can be that, the more you will attract people.
Right. Absolutely. And we do attract people to help us finish playing out those dramas, like I said, of what our parents did or previous relationships. We tend to keep getting in a relationship with the same basic person over and over and over again. And it's either our mother or our father, because it helps that little kid in us go, well, I'm going to finish playing out that drama. And that's just sort of what we do. Once you're in that relationship, that only works for so long, typically, before somebody gets unhappy, somebody starts to wander, so then at that point, if you find ways and you find exercises and you find things that can strengthen that relationship so you're both getting your needs met, then you can actually form that into a really long-term, loving, healthy relationship, and not just there temporarily to help you fix the BS from your parents. That it takes work. Relationships are work. And for people who I just want a relationship that's easy, I don't know what that looks. I mean, I'm in a relationship right now that's the easiest it's ever been, ever. But we still both work on our communication. We have a list of bylaws that started out to be a joke, which we ended up realizing, why would you not do? I had made a joke one day about, read the bylaws. And he's like, I've never seen these bylaws. And so we actually sat down and wrote bylaws, because why wouldn't you? We want to know where we stand with each other, and we're constantly working on communication and carving out time. And, we work at it in an easier way than I have in previous relationships, but it still takes effort. You can't just float along in a river and think that's a relationship.
Yeah. Relationships do take work. Right. But yeah, it's most people have some relationships issues, right? Like you said, I'm in an easy relationship right now too, and I think part of that is because we're both easy, right? And we kind of know and respect the other person. Mm-hmm. And we don't have written bylaws, but there's kind of a separation of duties, if you will, right? That I'm primarily responsible for certain things, and Allie's primarily responsible for other things, and we kind of have our own space, and we give each other space.
Yep.
We communicate, as well. But ultimately, and I think it's this way in any relationship, you have to be confident in yourself and taking care of yourself. Yeah. I can't make someone else be happy. I can do things to show love, to try to, encourage some of those things. But if that person doesn't feel that love for themselves, right, we have to eat for ourselves. Is one of the ways I've heard it, described. And so, for a relationship to kind of, develop, evolve, move forward, both of the people have to be communicating, have to be evolving, have to be doing what each of them individually needs to do in order for the relationship to continue to move forward, right? Absolutely. And that's where a lot of times relationships have issues, is one partner may be kind of moving forward, transitioning, maybe have changed their mind or have some different views than they did at the beginning, and the other person either doesn't want to change or doesn't want to accept those changes in their partner.
Yep.
And that's usually what ends up, I know that was the case for me with my first marriage. And again, it was so hard for my ex-wife to understand why, when we got married in our early 20s, that how come in my 40s I would change my mind about certain things.
Right.
It's like,
Jason.
I know, it's like, well, I never liked broccoli. Okay. As a kid, I didn't like broccoli. I'll eat it sometimes now because I know it's healthy, but it's as silly as that, right? If I hated broccoli as a kid,
you should hate it now.
And then if I become an adult and I like broccoli, I just changed my mind. What's the big deal, right? But people evolve and change, and so relationships evolve and change over time as well.
Sure.
And at least for me, most of the relationship issues that I see people having, that's one of the big things behind it too.
Yeah, exactly. And I am all for relationship coaching or couples counseling or whatever you want to call it. And I see so many couples where, and this typically the wife is like, we're having issues, I'm unhappy, we should go to counseling. And the guy says, yeah, you go, I don't have the problem. I have seen this so many times. And it's like, okay, you both have to participate in this. And I had given one of my coachees an exercise to do with her boyfriend. And I said, look, you guys both have to do this. If he's not up for doing this really simple exercise, it's going to strengthen your relationship. To me, one, that's an indicator that maybe he's not as into it as you think he is. To presenting such an easy exercise that will actually make him happier. He should, I believe, he would be willing to jump at that opportunity if he valued taking care of that relationship. But so often I see, and again, it's typically the guy that's like, yeah, you go to the therapist, I'm fine. Because they don't want to look at their own stuff. Looking at our own stuff is horrible. It's scary and it's shitty and it's ugly and smells bad. And I mean, it's like, of course we don't want to hold up that mirror and actually look at what we need to fix, because it takes a lot of work. It can be very frightening for people. And to me, it's like, well, why would you not want to fix that? It's like, I love, as much as I hate looking at all that stuff, I kind of like it, because then you get it out, and you can fix it. It's flicking the light on in the middle of the night and going, oh shit, look at all those roaches. I can't get rid of the roaches if I don't flick on the light. And that's what, to me, what relationships, the joy of doing is it shows us our stuff that we can then work on so that we're better people, so that we're healthier and more successful. And we get all those things we say we want out of life and out of relationships and out of love. Mm-hmm. That's where relationships are great for that. I think it's more difficult to do by yourself. I think this is one of the reasons we get in relationship with people, is to help hold up a mirror so that we can be better, to me, my opinion.
Well, and it's, I think another thing that I've seen a lot too with watching people kind of go through relationships is sometimes relationships have an end. Yeah. And they need to have an end. I think that we get the, fairy tale, Disney movie, princess, and they lived happily ever after, forevermore, Mm-hmm. And relationships serve us at different points in our life. Yep. And again, especially when you have people that are, developing and growing, which we all should be, right? That eventually maybe a relationship doesn't serve you. And again, it may not be a romantic one. It may be a relationship with a family or friends. Yeah. I have friends from high school that, whenever we get together, since I moved down to California, I haven't seen them very much. But, when I would get together with them, it was great for like the first half hour or hour. And then after that, we just didn't really have anything to talk about. Yeah. And it's not that I don't love these guys, they're my friends from growing up. I'd still do pretty much anything for some of these guys, because I do think of them as brothers in that way, but we just don't have anything in common now. We're at a different point in our life, mm-hmm. and it's okay. It's nothing about them. The relationship we had when we were teenagers was exactly the relationship I needed as a teenager.
Yeah, exactly.
But now as a middle-aged man, it's a little bit different. And it's hard, I think, sometimes, because I saw this in myself. I knew at least 4 to 5 years, if not 7 years before my divorce, that the relationship was probably over. But I kept trying to hang in there for my kids and for all the other bullshit excuses that society gives to us, right? And again, it was my path. I had to go that path. I learned things on those intervening years. But I see this so much in people that I talk to.
Mm-hmm.
They know a relationship is over, but they're afraid to end it.
Sure.
And this is where our self-love kind of comes back into it again, right? Is, okay, if you stop yourself, if you really love yourself, right? Can you say, I love myself can you say, I love myself first off, right? I love myself, right?
I love myself.
Can you say that 20 times to yourself in the day, or do you feel like, right? Okay, well, then maybe you need to start saying that more to yourself, right? Another question is, again, if you're in a relationship that's no longer serving you, or really in anything that you're doing, another question you can ask is, if I really loved myself, would I do this? And so again, if it's maybe a relationship is over, the person is abusive, emotionally, physically, whatever, if you stopped and were honest with yourself and said, if I really loved myself, would I allow this person that I'm in a relationship with to emotionally abuse me? Right? Go back to that question we said before, right? How would you advise a child or someone else that you loved?
Yep.
And we should be giving that advice to ourselves, if we really love ourselves. And sometimes loving yourself means doing some of those things that feels hard, that are scary.
Very hard. And I think part of it is that one person feels responsible for holding the relationship together, or they feel responsible for the other person's happiness. He'll be so upset if I leave, or she'll be devastated if I go. Okay. Or the guilt and fear, two huge motivating things. Guilt and fear, the fear of not having enough money, of how am I going to raise the kids myself, of where am I going to live, the guilt of, oh, her family will never forgive me if I go, what will my friends say, all that kind of stuff. And I've watched people go through that. I've watched me go through parts of that as well. It does come down to the self-love and to stepping into that position of power, and saying, I'm not going to be here anymore. And it doesn't have to be some melodramatic reason that you're going. It could just be that you drifted apart. After 30, I have changed so much in the 50 years I've been on this planet. Obviously, I'm not a kindergartner anymore. I don't think that doing a duet with Eddie Van Halen would be the greatest thing. It'd still be pretty great.
It would still be pretty great.
It would still be pretty great.
That.
Let's put that back on the list. Okay. But it's like things that I valued even 10 years ago, I don't anymore. I have grown and moved past that, and I'm a completely different person. And I agree with you, not every relationship stays. I think we get in relation to help us to grow, to evolve, to learn things, to move forward. And I think people come into our lives exactly when needed, and they stay for some indeterminate amount of time. And sometimes it is forever. I have clients who have been together 20, 30, 50, 60 years, and they're still vibrant and happy and healthy together. And I've had people in their 80s say, God, I wish I would have left him 40 years ago. I can't leave now. It's like, you have to make whatever choice is going to work for you. And you have to determine how much work that you want to put into salvaging something that may not be salvageable. And only you know that. And only that's an individual relationship thing. But it does take work, and it does take effort, and both partners have to be engaged in that. Both partners, absolutely. I mean, if you and I weren't communicating the way we do and weren't sort of divvying up I'm not great on the marketing like you are, but divvying up the task, and this relationship would not work.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. Something that you said too is, people come into our lives. And so we're not just talking about romantic relationships here, but obviously that's when people talk about, I have a relationship issue, that's usually that is what they're talking about. Right. But it can be with anybody.
Sure.
But people come into our lives exactly at the time that we need them to. We learn what it is that we need to learn, and then they move on. They may move on through death. They may move on through, relationship just doesn't work. Somebody moves, whatever reason. People come into our lives and people leave our life. Everybody will. But there's one relationship that you will always be with your whole life. And that's the relationship with yourself. You can't get away from yourself.
Nope.
And so if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, if you don't really love yourself, if you don't think that you're worthy and exactly perfect, exactly the way that you are at this point in time, then you're going to have a hard time living in your relationship with yourself until you decide that. And realize that we don't need that external. The power comes from internal.
Absolutely. A very wise woman once said, no matter who I'm sleeping next to or who I'm sleeping with, I always have to wake up with myself.
Very good quote. Oh, was that the wise woman? I like that. I'm going to have to start using that one now.
I wrote a play when I was living in LA, and one of the characters was this. Her goal was just to sleep with everybody. She wanted to experience everything. And that's the end of her monologue. She says that. It's like, no matter who I'm sleeping next to or who I'm sleeping with, I have to wake up with myself. And it's about that self-love and that valuing self, regardless of who's in your sphere, regardless of the input that you're getting from the outside. Because if we're relying on people outside of ourselves to make us happy, to give us that identity, we're going to be disappointed. So we have to do that for ourselves. And once again, we've blown through a bunch of time.
Well, no, and I think actually that's a great. You are a wise woman, Kathy. I think that's a fabulous. Probably one of the reasons why I love movies and other stuff so much too, is because, as an artist, when you put together and you get a line like that, no matter who I sleep next to or sleep with, I wake up to myself in the morning, right? Kind of a thing. That is profound. And that's, again, what we're talking about. Focus internally. We've talked about why we get so much validation from our external environment. It's programmed into us. But the more that we can actually really love ourselves and be confident in our relationship with ourselves, a lot of these other relationship issues just kind of go away. Because we'll create boundaries. We won't allow people to treat us certain ways. We'll change ourselves. We'll attract those other people into our life that need to be in our life at that time. But it all starts with us.
Absolutely. And I love this conversation because we've talked about self-care. We've talked about the 5 love languages in regards to ourself. So we can go back to those episodes and realize this has been a theme that runs throughout this because, we're always with ourselves. So we might as well get along.
Might as well get along.
Might as well get along. All right. Oh, I love this conversation. We never know where these things are going to go, but yeah, I like where that went. So that was good. Excellent. All right. I'm Kathy Gruver. I can be reached at kathygruver.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com. So go out, love yourself, and we'll see you on the next Fire and Earth podcast.
Yeah.
See ya.